Welcome to the Divorce Podcast, where we explore relationships, divorce, separation, and parenting apart. This episode is part of our new mini-series where we answer your questions and share practical bite-sized tips. I'm your host, Kate Daly, a relationship counsellor, divorce specialist, and co-founder of Amicable, the online legal service for separating couples. As part of Mental Health Awareness Week, today we want to answer a question shared about divorce anxiety. Divorces and separations are never easy, even if they're amicable. So I wanted to look at some tips on how to cope if you feel overwhelmed by worry during this time. And this question really gave me a kind of food for thought when I read it, because I could just feel the anxiety in the question. So here's what was said. We've just started to talk about putting our house on the market, how it will impact our boys and how we feel. This is so hard and we haven't even started. I feel a lot of fear about being on my own and making the move, just scared. Well, I think you'll agree, you can hear in that question just the level of anxiety. And that's because at the very start of the process, everything is unknown and it feels massive and it feels overwhelming. And as is expressed in that question, people just don't know where to start. And divorce anxiety is a real thing. It's not a made up thing. It's something that's really real and very palpable. And if you've ever been through a breakup or a divorce, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's that kind of feeling where you feel absolutely everything in your life has literally been thrown up in the air. And at the beginning of the process, you're waiting for all those pieces to fall back down to earth. You're not sure where they're going to land. You know, there might be some real fundamental existential questions like, where am I going to live? How am I going to survive? How will I have enough money? How will I work and look after children? All of that stuff is kind of falling in on you at that point, and it can feel like a really dark and scary place. But I think, like with anything, there are some things you can do that will help just temper some of those raw emotions. And sometimes the very first thing you can do is just realize and recognize your feelings are perfectly valid and perfectly normal. Of course, when something as big as a divorce happens, you're going to feel out of sorts. You're going to feel raw and scared. These are all feelings that are perfectly normal and natural. So it's kind of like leaning into it a little bit and saying, okay, I know and it's expected that I will feel like this. This is not unusual. And I think if you can just, to yourself, normalize those feelings, that what you're feeling is exactly normal and exactly what other people going through this are feeling, then that's really the first thing that can actually help in that scenario. I think also you've got to see this, as I said, it's sometimes at the very beginning of it, you don't know how long it's going to take. You don't know what kind of length of time you'll be in this for. So thinking of a relationship breakdown or a divorce or separation as a marathon rather than a sprint is really important. And if you're going to do a marathon, you know you've got to get some prep in and you've got to take care of yourself. So self-care is a really big and important way of coping with ambiguity that comes with a divorce or relationship breakdown. So taking care of your mental and physical well-being, trying to create routines, so sticking to some routines that you find helpful, so it gives you a sense of normality, but also doing some additional things that might soothe or comfort you so that you've got more in the bank, more resource to play with. So it might be small things like going for a walk, doing some mindfulness, journaling. A lot of people find very helpful. But whatever it is, whether it's doing some more sport or painting or, spending some time just being, whatever you can do to carve out some time for yourself is going to really pay dividends when you're in the mix and in the thrust of all of this divorce and separation. I think another thing is to try and be kind to yourself, which sounds really easy. And we've all got, haven't we, the critical voice in our heads, and mine's really loud sometimes. But being patient with yourself and trying just to dial down that self-criticism is really important. So don't rush into things. If you need to take some time to let the emotional fallout actually settle before you rush off making legal or financial decisions, then that's fine. It's right and proper to take that time and not feel rushed. Don't let your partner rush you either. You might need to grieve the relationship a little bit before you're in a place where you can actually start to talk about what you're going to do next and what a solution looks like. Obviously, in all of this, there's the balance, isn't there? It might take you a long, long time. It might take years. You can't necessarily leave it years before you start making some decisions. But just allowing that initial raw edge to come off is really important, because otherwise you make it very difficult for you and your partner to actually come to any agreements. So I think just trying to be patient and just trying to take a little bit of time, perhaps do some research to let that, as I say, that initial emotional upheaval just damp down a little bit. There is time to do some research. There is time to find out about different ways. And being patient with yourself and with each other is a kind of a key part of that. Whenever a big change happens, I think all of us fall into the trap of trying to solve the whole thing all in one go, because I think we're programmed like that. Well, I know I am anyway. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself here. But that is when I actually get at my most overwhelmed, when I think, oh, I've got to do it all. There's this to do, there's that to do. I've got to sort out kids. I've got to sort out house. I've got to sort out finances. I've got to sort out everything. And then, it just all sort of crashes down at that point. So I think that the tip here, a very obvious one, is to break it down into smaller steps. Try not to think about the whole, because that's when overwhelm really does happen. So just think about, what is the next thing I actually have to do? And remind yourself that all of these things can be broken down into smaller steps. So what's the very next thing I have to do? Do I just need to make the decision about which type of process to go with? I don't need to have all the answers. Maybe the first thing I've just got to do, and the goal I set myself for this next 30 days, is pick a process. Choose who's going to help us do this. Maybe that's all I've got to do. And don't worry about the other things. Try and put them in a box, try and keep them separate. Do one thing at a time. Because I think when you've got that sense of having achieved one thing as well, it builds your confidence. And so you think, okay, I've done that. Right, I can go on to the next thing now. And I think that's what builds momentum in a process. And you need a bit of momentum because, like I said at the beginning, this can be a long process. So you're going to need a little bit of things to carry you through. And some small early wins is definitely a good way of carrying that momentum forward. I think the other thing to remember as well, I know it feels really isolating. I've been through this. I've been through it twice, and it feels isolating in different ways, depending on what age and stage you are. But realistically, you are not alone. You only have to ask around your friendship group. Everybody will know somebody who's been divorced or separated. So there are lots of people who have been through this. More importantly, there are lots of people who are set up to help with this from a professional perspective. And I'm not talking about the lawyers here or anybody else like that. I'm talking about therapists, counselors, trusted friends who will support you through this really difficult time. So, although it's sometimes really difficult to speak to the people you're close to, if you can't or don't want to, there are free groups, there are free telephone helplines where, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you can call, and we'll put some of that stuff in the show notes for sure, but you don't have to feel alone. There are lots of resources, even on the Amicable website, where you can get help and advice, where you can connect with other people going through the same kind of things. And sometimes hearing other people's stories can be a real comfort and can be really soothing, because it just reminds you that this is unique to you, but it's not unique to the world. It happens. Nearly half of all marriages break down now, and therefore there are a lot of people going through a separation or a relationship breakdown. And at any given moment, you could probably look across a crowded room or the checkout at the supermarket or whatever you're doing and know that there are plenty of people who are going through the same kind of thing as you are. So reach out for help. There is, or there should be, no sense of shame in a relationship coming to an end. For lots of people, the end of a relationship is the beginning of a new opportunity. So try and embrace it, try and lean into it. And of course, if it's painful, reach out and speak to somebody who can help you walk through that pain and who can walk alongside you. There's also lots of help for the more sort of technical nitty-gritty part of the problem. So if you've got issues around children and how you're going to be fantastic co-parents, or you've got issues around finances, how you're going to split things so that everyone's got enough money to live on, everyone's got somewhere to live, everyone's got something to do in retirement. If those are the questions that you want to know, then again, there are lots of resources on the Amicable website. So please go and visit and have a look. And there are timelines, there are things to help with court fees and all different resources that you can tap into. We've got a huge number of blogs as well that talk about some very specific issues around different aspects of finances or children and how you navigate the divorce process amicably. So I hope those tips will give you some peace of mind, knowing that divorce anxiety is real, it's normal, it's natural, but there is help that you can reach out and access. And we're always here to help. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. That's all we have time for, but I hope some of the tips that you take away from today will take the pressure off and allow you to have good mental health during this challenging time. Like I say, go over to the Amicable website, amicable.co.uk, where you can explore our resources. And of course, you can book a free advice consultation as well if you'd like to speak to one of us. And if you want more information about the podcast or you want to subscribe for updates, please visit thedivorcepodcast.com, or you can find us on your favorite listening platform as well. And finally, we would love to be able to help further. So please share any questions or thoughts you have about divorce and separation or co-parenting with us at hello@amicable.co.uk. And you never know, your question might feature on the next mini podcast. Thanks everybody for listening.